Pavlovian conditioning, also known as classical conditioning, is a fundamental concept in psychology. It was discovered by Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist, during the late 19th century while he was studying the digestive systems of dogs. Pavlov noticed something peculiar during his research. Every time his assistant entered the room, the dogs began to salivate, even if they were presented with food. This observation led to a series of experiments and, eventually, the discovery of classical conditioning. First, the food served as the unconditioned stimulus, meaning it naturally caused a response. The natural order for dogs was to salivate from the food, an unconditioned response. Second, the neutral stimulus, meaning an object that does not cause any specific response on its own. In this image is the whistle. During conditioning, Pavlov rang the metronome, replaced by the whistle in this presentation, and then immediately presented the dogs with food. This means he paired the neutral stimulus with the unconditioned stimulus. After several repetitions, the dogs started to associate the metronome sound with the incoming food. Lastly, when the metronome was rung on its own, without the presence of food, the dogs still salivated, indicating the dog's response was conditioned. The metronome became a conditioned stimulus, and the salivation in response to the metronome became a conditioned response. Extinction, spontaneous recovery, and other concepts. Extinction. If the conditioned stimulus, for instance, the metronome, is presented repeatedly without the unconditioned stimulus or food, the conditioned response or salivation will eventually disappear. Spontaneous recovery. After a conditioned response has been extinguished, it may suddenly reappear after some time when the conditioned stimulus is presented again. For instance, perhaps the dog will salivate. Generalization. A conditioned response might also be triggered by stimuli that are similar but not identical to the conditioned stimulus. For instance, the dogs might also respond to a similar sounding object. Discrimination, however, is when an organism can learn to differentiate between two similar stimuli and only respond to the actual conditioned stimulus. This means that the dog can learn to tell the difference and only respond to the metronome, not the other similar sounding object. In real-world applications, we see Pavlovian conditioning in advertisements. Commercials, for instance, will often pair products like a Coca-Cola drink with stimuli that evoke positive feelings, such as a sunny beach. Over time, we may start to associate positive feelings with the product itself. Some fears may also develop through conditioning. For example, if someone had a scary experience with a dog as a child, they might grow up being afraid of dogs. Another instance would be if you got sick after eating a particular food. You may develop a distaste for that food in the future. This is called taste aversion. In conclusion, Pavlovian conditioning is a fundamental concept that shows how organisms, including humans, can learn through association. This process has been pivotal in understanding various aspects of human behavior and has applications in numerous areas, from therapy to advertising.